are you in business if you're not having fun, right, guys? So you'll see us having fun. You'll see us goofing around with each other just a little as we cut up because our team dynamic is such where we have a blast together. And so again, you'll get to know our personalities if this is your first time joining us. For those of you who are coming back to us, I believe this is a series. I think it's our fourth webinar that we've done in a series of webinars. If you're joining us again, we want to thank you as you continue to educate yourself on Zambia and specifically the Zambian market within Africa. And as we share some of the things that we've discovered and that we've learned throughout our time in this operation. So I'll briefly introduce myself. Again, I'm Scott Griswold. I have the privilege of being a part of this operation with my partners that I'll introduce you to. We are all Tony Robbins Platinum partners. That's how we met. And we've had an incredible adventure up to this point. So I'll start by introducing Carl, Jeff, and Brandon. Carl, would you like to go ahead and introduce yourself, brother, and let the folks know who you are today?
Sure, guys. Thank you very much for taking the time with us this morning or afternoon or evening, wherever time it is for you. My name's Carl Steinman. I am the Chief Operating Officer. I've really put together a lot of the numbers with our CFO, really just dove in deep to our thesis, and we'll tell you a little bit about that thesis, why we're excited today. Our topic today is an exciting one, so I won't give it away just yet, but I'll turn it over to Jeff Boards, our CEO.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tyman from Luanda, Angola. It's a pleasure to be here again. Scott mentioned this is our third, if not fourth, webinar we're hosting. We're excited to do it. More and more people are coming back. So it's good to have you. And in this, like Carl alluded, it's going to be a fun one. We have some interesting facts to share. And we hope you continue tuning in and ask your questions. I'll pass it over to Brandon.
Hey, guys. Thanks. Brandon Kramer here, Chief Development Officer. I'm the guy that makes sure things get done on the ground. So excited for today, excited for the series, and to keep things rolling.
All right, guys. Thanks so much for introducing yourselves. And folks, like I said, we are not professional webinar hosts. We're just a group of highly passionate, talented business entrepreneurs and professionals. Each one of us have built outstanding businesses in our own right. And just to give you a brief history of how we came together, like I said, we were we are all currently Tony Robbins Platinum partners. We were at an event. I'll tell my story briefly. I was at an event where we were actually rescuing 50 kids out of the Congo. We made that possible. And this was an incredible operation at a business mastery event. And I got introduced specifically at that time to Jeff and Carl. And I learned about Jeff's history in Africa in particular at that moment, that he'd been in Africa already, in Zambia, for 12 years. And what I loved most about it is his mission and his heart. He said, hey, look, I want to educate 100,000 children for free. And he'd already been personally funding operations on the ground there, and just his heart to give and his heart to serve. And what I didn't know at that moment was he and Carl had already been working on this operation that you're here to hear about today for about 8 months. And so there was already a ton of groundwork and a track record in place in our Acres Club operation and 12 years of track record building a company in an emerging market. I later found out that Jeff has business in 26 different countries with his team, and the crew there in Zambia absolutely love him because in the education technology business, which is how he entered Africa, he brought education to that region. So all of the locals, the indigenous, the royal families, the tribal chiefs, and the government both back him entirely. So when these operations are coming into Africa and seeking to purchase large plots of land or seeking to extract minerals from the land, typically Jeff and his team are going to get the call first to have the first right of refusal. And this is something that I find to be very beautiful. So I started to walk away. I said, Jeff, I'll be back. I'm on my way to a meeting. And guys, it was like the voice of God said, turn around and go talk to them right now. And I walked back and I said, Jeff, I'm here. What can I do to help? And guys, it was at that point that I learned that they had 50,000 acres of land, that a fund that they were launching with 25,000 acres of land. And the entire goal was to hold the land to add value, not to take value out of the country, but to bring value to the nation, to bring value to the country. This got me excited. And we started to see how could we add tremendous value even on top of that. And we saw that in addition to growing the value of the land, we could also have an agriculture play to create income for our investors along the way, because that was the greatest need. There's people who need to be fed. They need access to ready, sustainable, regenerative, consciously grown food. And this became what we got passionate about and what we're doing today. So today we're here to talk to you about the strategic importance of infrastructure that is being built around us. And there's no one better to talk about that with you than my dear friends Carl and Jeff themselves. So Carl, Jeff, talk to us about the topic of discussion today, the Chinese railway. We talked before about the Libido corridor and how that operation was significantly impacting the ability to do business in Zambia and the infrastructure and sustainability. Well, now we're approaching it from the other side. I'll go ahead and turn it over to you. Guys, please welcome Carl and Jeff.
Thank you, Scott. And yes, if you haven't had a chance to review our YouTube channel, we do talk about our excitement about the Libido corridor, which I'll summarize really quickly, and you can dive in and check out our previous webinar. But the Libido corridor is going from Angola, which is on the western side of Africa, into central part where Zambia is. Zambia is in the southern region, centrally located in, there we go, a map. That's the Libido corridor. So if you're looking at where we are just where the pink gray area converge. So that got us naturally excited. We built our entire thesis without having this major development. And what that development is, it's an old railway that's getting massive influx of cash and loans from 3 major corporations out of the EU, and then also partially funded by the US government. So very excited. We got into some of the details about that during our last webinar. Now, what gets us even more excited, and this is all fairly new within the last 6 months. Now, of course, this has been going on for some time, but some of the announcements have come out just as recent as February of 2024, and that is on the other side of the country, and that's the Tazara project, which is mainly funded by the Chinese. So the Chinese, if you're familiar with geopolitics, they've been heavily investing in Africa for a number of years in many different countries, providing some infrastructure. Their process is a little bit different, more with debt. And we won't get into some of those challenges that the countries have faced with some of this investment. But however, they're still a big believer. And we'll get into a little bit about why. Why is there so much interest in Africa? And why is there so much interest in these railways? What is this going to mean? So, Scott, maybe you could pull up the map really quickly that shows the railway that goes from the eastern portion of Africa, again, now into central, right? So again, you remember the map going from west into the central part of Zambia. This is going from east into the central part of Zambia. And where do these all converge? They converge right where we are, which is just incredibly, I don't know, I like to think of it as divine, right? When we started this whole opportunity, where we've acquired land with the relationships that Jeff has with the indigenous folks and the tribal leaders in that part of the world, is right there. So being close to transportation to bring goods in and out of the country are huge. Does that mean much to us other than there's going to be investment, money, development, villages, people all converging there for job opportunities? Absolutely. And what do all those people need? They need food. So in a region that has some challenges with food security, with a growing population, that is the basis of everything that we have put our time, energy, critical thinking, and certainly our passion and money into this region to help solve that major issue that's happening. Jeff, do you want to add anything there?
Well, I think you touched on a lot of interesting part because last time we met, we talked about the libido corridor, and it would not be fair not to talk on the other side, right? And we looked at the historical context of the Tazara as a symbol from China to show support for all the newly African independent colonies, and that was a way I would say China got its foothold in Africa, and that was in the 1970s. Now with the revived interest in the libido corridor, you see China seeing this as a way to also revive the railway and to renew the interest. The Tazara Railway had a massive impact in the region, connecting Zambia and Tanzania to the rest of the world. And what's going to happen with the libido corridor is going to create massive impact from Angola, the Congo, and of course Zambia. And like you said, it's like the divine providence. We're smack down between those two railways. And as more traffic comes, a lot of the villages are going to boom, as you know. It means that people need food, right? So that's our role. Our fund focuses primarily on tackling the food security issues in the region. You've been there. We've been all across Zambia. We know it's lush green. And the main issue we have right now in the region is a lack of funding. Many of the farmers are still using the old traditional tools to farm, and they're still at the mercy of nature. So if there's a drought, there's usually a shortage of food, which is happening this year. Matter of fact, if you check in the news, you'll find out there's major impact on the Zambian economy. Just last year, the millet meal was going for about 400 kwacha for 50 kg bags. Now it's 825, less than 10 months later. So it's just to show you that food security in the region is a critical notion. And when you look at the hierarchy of needs, Maslow hierarchy of needs, the foundation of our society is on food, right? And farming is a critical part of any sustainable development. And we think as our fund grows, as our fund develop, as our project grows in the land, creating commercial farm that tackles key food storage and creation, especially around maize and soybeans, is going to make a massive impact in the region. And what's great about our position, Carl, you mentioned the position, is that countries such as the Congo, which heavily rely on mineral and mining, can also access our food as we create surplus. We can sell some to Angola. We can also sell some over to neighboring countries like Tanzania. So I think what we have is it's very special. That's why we're having these webinars to create more education, to get people to understand beyond the pleasing our investors. We have more like our role in the region is going to be impactful, because I think as the countries that double their population, food security is going to play a massive role in the development of Africa. I want to touch on that, and maybe I'll pass it over to you, Carl, and we can tackle some other topic around our project.
Jeff, you made a great point there, and I'll just add to everybody. If you look at history, everybody talks about history is doomed to repeat itself. And we look at the cradle of civilization happened between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. And that's where you actually had people start to begin to grow cities. And the population went from hunters and gatherers to the civilization we have today. Having these two lifelines of logistics to move product is really going to help the area soar. As you look at everything that is evolved over time, it's all about moving product. It really doesn't matter how good your product is, whatever that is, if you can't move it. You can have a mountain of gold, but if nobody can get to it, it's really kind of worthless. And so having that opportunity to be able to move in different directions and have options to sell to different markets is really going to be the value. Like you look at the Silk Road that back in the day, well, why was that so valuable? It was the one vein, and everybody who was on that got rich. And so having this is going to be a huge opportunity. I mean, you really nailed it on the head there.
Absolutely.
Yep, cool. And so moving on, so we'll go ahead and talk a little bit more about what's happening with the railway. Carl, did you have another point you wanted to make?
Yeah, well, I think before kind of we move on, you know, and it was mentioned, I think we should touch a little bit about why is there so much interest in these railways in itself, right? And in the country. And I don't think it's a secret, right? There's, you know, heavy, it's rich in minerals, right? Everyone has heard about, certainly many countries around the world have declared, hey, we want combustible engines off the road by 2030, 2035, 2040, whatever that might be. And what does that mean? That means they want to go to lithium battery cars, right? And if you look at the number of cars that are produced in a country like, say, England, right? We're talking about millions. And you know, we're not going to go into what makes a electric vehicle move, but it's a lot of batteries, which takes a lot of copper, a lot of cobalt, right? And in this region, it is rich in these areas. And from what I understand, especially around the DRC, the cobalt density is much higher than some of the other areas. So very interesting nonetheless. But this is where a lot of the world's materials for the future expectation of electric power vehicles is really happening. And of course, anyone that has, you know, an Apple iPhone or any other type of smart device or laptop, this is where some of these minerals are being produced, and we're talking about massive quantities. So you know, that is really the direction of why there's so much interest in the world here.
Carl, I think you make an outstanding point there, and all points considered, guys. For our listeners, these topics that are being raised right now and these key points that are being brought to attention are so vital in why Africa, why Zambia. These are questions that we get all the time, right? So why is there so much focus on this region? Why is the NFL talking about going to Africa, for goodness sakes? Why are billionaires and companies that we all know the names of heavily invested in Africa right now? And these are the answers that we're getting as we discuss this very topic. And so as we look at this Tazara Railway, and we've talked about the Libido corridor, guys, I just want to pose the question as a topic of discussion. You know, there's some real strategic importance to the Tazara Railway, as we've discussed. And I think it might be useful to maybe give some of the background in a little bit deeper light as to how this Tazara Railway came to be, the strategic importance, the economic impact of it in this region, and then maybe even get into the geopolitical and economic context of it and why we're so excited about this, even though it wasn't even part of our original thesis. I mean, in full transparency, when we got involved in this operation, we had no consideration of what was going on. And then maybe it would be beneficial to even talk about the risk mitigation structure. And although we're not banking on this for our success, we're certainly going to take advantage of it. Much like Carl just said, hey, look, if they're coming into the region, they're building infrastructure for us. Yeah, we'll gladly take that. So maybe Carl, Jeff, you guys can just talk through that for a moment, if you don't mind, and let our listeners understand a little bit further detail about the Tazara Railway and why it's so strategically beneficial to us.
Sure. Well, I think.
Oh, you want to take a yeah.
I mean, Jeff, if you want to grab this one, please do.
No, you can start, and I'll add a few more notes on the economic importance and the strategic point. So you can go ahead.
Yeah, well, I'll you know, let me frame it a little bit differently for us, right? We're here for the Acres Club. We're here about you know, launching a regenerative farming to feed people, right? To take advantage of certainly this or let's provide an outlet for food security on a growing population, right? That's where the whole thesis came. We did build an economic model, right, for investors, because we are launching a fund. And ultimately what we did was build out what is the certainly cost of land, and then the cost of adding value, right? By how do we launch a farm? And our whole thesis is based on planting seasons, the number of tons of goods that we can harvest in these seasons. That's going to provide a cash flow. And what we intentionally did was we chose commodity crops that are needed and used mostly in this part of the region, and you can provide a inflation busting cash crop on of commodity like maize to be produced on land that is really going to go up in value based on some of these infrastructure projects, of course, and really help solve some of the challenges that the region faces. So that's where, what I can talk about from our perspective in terms of what does it mean for a fund? Why are we there, right? Impact investing is great. We certainly all stem off of Jeff's big heart in terms of what he's been able to do in the region. And certainly that's a big part of our DNA and our value system that we all share. But ultimately, we know that we're going to need some investments from around the world. And those investors, certainly, we're targeting impact investors, but ultimately folks want to have a return and see that their investments are going to go a long way. We believe we've shown that.
Outstanding job, Carl.
And we want to focus also on two things: the economic importance and the strategic impact, right? As you look at exporting copper from Zambia, as a land-connected country, we should say landlocked, but we say land-connected, or it means that Zambia has the potential to be strategically located to connect with 8 other countries. Finding an easy way to export copper to China and to the West is going to be important because most of the final goods that are produced from the copper are either located in Chinese factories or in the Western side. Although there's a huge talk now on moving most of these factories in Zambia. And I think I'm for that because it means that Africa will benefit more from all the raw materials producing to the world. But it also focuses on the agriculture sector as well, which is where we come from. It'll allow farmers like ourselves to get our products to a broader market, meaning we'll be able to grow things. And after we provide a surplus within the Zambian market, the excess can be exported further away, right? Because you see a lot of Chinese farmers coming into Zambia, and a lot of the things that they're growing oftentimes goes right back outside of Zambia. So we want to focus on finding ways to create value that is staying within Zambia in the neighboring countries, right? And from a more strategic impact standpoint, we're looking at we have a huge geopolitical reliance on the Horn of Africa. And as you know, this is not the most stable area of the region. And this railway will allow us to rely less and less on the Horn of Africa, allowing a lot of, and for Southern Africa, is like South Africa plays a big role in terms of port access. So you'll be able to create more strategic access point to get food out of the continent much quicker into more value. So reducing the cost of getting cars or getting food in and out of the country. So for me, I think these are the two main things I want to emphasize as far as value point for us as a fund and for the rest of the region.
Outstanding. And Jeff, Carl, thank you very much for covering this. And I wanted to just circle back around on that, guys, for our attendees, because I want to bring abundant clarity to the fact that everything is working in our favor. I mean, this is what I love, Carl, you said this. It seems like synchronistically, it's just so many beautiful things are coming together to help Zambia and to help this operation be a massive success, right? So when we think about the railway that we're discussing right now, I mean, we've got a country that said, hey, we're going to invest $1 billion into the infrastructure that's going to directly support you, right? And then we think about the Libido corridor, which we discussed last time. We've got a massive undertaking that goes directly into the sustainability of our operation and goes directly into our ability to move goods throughout the region. Brandon, I think you made an excellent point on you can have a mountain of gold. Let's think about the city of Atlantis, right? The mythical city of Atlantis. We know that this is a city of gold. We don't know where it is right now, so what good is it, right? Same thing. If you've got a mountain of goods, but you have no ability to move it throughout the region, throughout the world, what good is it? And so these are things that we thought about when we were going underway with our agriculture operation, and we knew that we could add tremendous value to the local region. Now we know we can add value to the entire nation of Zambia, and even with surplus, the surrounding territories and eventually the world. And I want to just take a moment to honor and acknowledge those who are asking questions in our Q&A panel. I want to thank you for that. Thank you for taking the time to fill the chat and to fill the questions with your feedback and really engaging with us. And at the end of our session today, I'll make you the promise that we will absolutely highlight all of those live for you right now. So thank you so much for doing that. As we continue to discuss the topic at hand, and there's some great questions, guys, by the way, so make sure you take a look. I love the engagement. So as we continue, I want to make a quick point and highlight again just how incredible our location happens to be right between that Libido corridor and the Tazara Railway. And I'll do it by saying this, just briefly. Think about how, if you want to be successful, right? There was a time in my life where guys, I got a little overweight, right? We all went through COVID together. How many people got into the COVID snacks? Anybody else get into the COVID snacks, right? I had nothing else to do, right? I was working like crazy. I was adding tremendous value in my companies. And those COVID snacks started to pile up on me a little bit. And so I got a little hefty. Now, where am I going at with this? If you want to be successful, you want to model success. Now, I tried all kinds of diets. I tried all kinds of things. And I got to the point where I'm like, I've got to find somebody who knows what they're doing. And so I found someone who had gotten overweight and successfully released that weight and kept it off. And so what I started to do was model success. Well, I want to just think about this for a second. If we're going to build a city eventually, that's our long-term play to add tremendous value to this region. But if we're going to build a farming operation, conscious, sustainable, regenerative farming operation, and we need to move those goods throughout a region, where has this been done successfully already? Think about America, guys. Think about America when the Wild West was settled. What drew people to the West? It was the promise of gold, wasn't it? And people started going out west like crazy, looking for these resources, which were hidden underground. And what happened as a result of that, nations started to come together as well. What happened as a result of that is there were base infrastructure and sustainability. There was base infrastructure and sustainability, I should say, that had to be formed. People started bringing their families. They started bringing their children. There were workers. There were jobs created. And this infrastructure started to be built. And everyone who was a part of it got to be very successful. And now look at it. We've got any city that you could think of. We could think of up in the Midwest. We've got Cleveland. We've got Chicago. We've got Denver. Name a city, you'll know it most likely. And it all started because people were drawn to a region looking for resources. The same thing is happening right now. People are being drawn to this region, yes, looking for resources, and we understand that those people are going to need jobs, they're going to need food, and they're going to need sustainable opportunities to continue their way of life as they settle. So for me, the strategic importance of where this operation is right between major points of convergence is a very exciting opportunity that we want to take advantage of, and we absolutely want to bring to our investors and to the people who we get to benefit by our agricultural and economic operation. So Brandon, I'd like to give you the opportunity here to talk a little bit more about just that, the agricultural impact and how the economic growth, the investment opportunities, and how we're truly adding so much value to the region as we continue with our operation will be incredibly valuable to not only the locals, but everyone around that entire area of our existence.
Thanks, Scott. I appreciate it. So as we kind of talked and touched on a little bit, civilization is built on movement and movement of goods and services. That's how growth happens. The biggest countries in the world are the ones that do the most trade. You look at China, you look at the US, those have the strongest economic power. And it's not because we're just isolated. It's because we're able to trade and open up other markets. So looking at these, two veins now of sales that you've got, essentially the East and the West, it allows you to be able to get to whatever market you want and really get the best price. So versus having one market that you have to go and you sell to one person and they can just set the price, similar to what Walmart did before Amazon came in and started competing with them. Walmart would go to suppliers and they say, hey, we're going to buy all your product, but you're going to sell it to us at this price. Well, people kind of had to do it because it was the only market they really had. And so opening up other markets is going to allow business to flourish, not only for us, but for the locals. So as people get exposed more and more to local goods and services, they're going to want that. So Zambia and Africa in general is no different than any other country. They have culture, they have specific items that they can make that people want and need. They just don't know they exist, and they're very expensive to move. Having efficient railway system is going to allow products to move efficiently. Look at anytime that you order something online. If it's certain items, they don't even take the returns because the shipping costs so much. You order something and 60% of the cost of the goods is shipping alone. And so with me, I've built multiple warehouses across the country. And when we go in there, they don't even bother taking returns and processing them and putting them back on the shelf. What they do is just take them, put them in a pile, and they go sell them in a bulk auction because it's just not worth the time to move everything. And so when you can take a massive cost like that and shrink it, it's going to pay huge dividends. And so with us looking at moving, basic food that grows into numerous different things. So you've got flour to make bread, you've got different oils. I mean, it can go into different veins of production throughout the country and the surrounding countries, which is going to bring production costs down, which means that it brings the total sales down and also keeps a good margin so that people can be successful and then keep reinvesting that and grow the local economy. That's how it's going to flourish. Every time that you can have those markets, you're going to flourish in a local economy. And so as far as the, benefits outside of just the agricultural piece and what that's going to do long term, just building the railway itself and the outside investment is going to provide jobs, stability, which in turn is going to provide spending power, which goes back into the local economy. And then it's just a positive feedback loop that just keeps growth. That's why whenever the US or any other country is struggling, the government will inject money and make money really, really cheap so that people make investment, buy things, because then when people buy things, they make money and then they go buy things, and it just keeps going, going, going. And that's what you're going to see in a big way here in Zambia particularly, but then the surrounding countries are all going to benefit. It's really going to lift the area up. And people always get concerned with, what about the violence in Africa? And what about this? Well, first of all, let's remember Africa is one of 7 continents in the world. Think about how big that is. You look at, if you did a map of America and you look at the 1600s, whenever 100 settlers from Britain came and settled at Jamestown. Okay, like how big America is. Well, Africa's bigger. Okay, and so you look at what that's like. Yeah, that's a great, exactly. How massive is that? And so we're just one piece. And so the area that we're talking about is very stable, and it's only going to get better as you grow this, because when people have stable jobs, stable income, and they're not worried about the next meal or their money, then a lot of the radical left and right and all this revolutionary and war stuff kind of ceases to exist, because people are like, wait a minute, I got a full belly, I got a nice house, the soccer game's on. Like, why do I want to go fight in the jungle, right? Instead, people are going to enjoy the finer things in life. That's why you see Zambia, for instance, taking off. The largest meat producer in the country of Zambia, and often the surrounding countries as well. It's because that middle class is just growing more and more and more. And as that grows, they get that appetite for meat. Everybody wants a nice big steak. What do you do when you get a promotion or something? Go get a steak. Like, everybody does that. Like, oh, hey, we're going to go celebrate. Let's go to a steakhouse. And so that's a great indicator to see how a middle class is growing and how you're really lifting an entire economy up out of poverty. I kind of rambled a little bit. Let me get back on here. So as far as investment opportunities for us and for anybody, when you look at one vein, which is what we're talking about, just agriculture, okay, we know that that feeds multiple veins of production. So the great thing about us and working with Jeff and his education piece is that as we are providing that stability to the area and having our way that we're creating revenue, other things create in the vertical chain. So for instance, you're talking about production, processing, all these little things that spin off that we're pairing with the locals to do. Because at the end of the day, that's the whole point, is that we want to keep moving forward and lift the local economy. So I'll go ahead and toss it over to Carl and let him touch on a little bit of stuff with the fund.
Sure. Let's see here. So everything that we're talking about today, by the way, is for information purposes. I think, you know, we didn't talk about our disclaimer last time, but ultimately, if we're going to talk a little bit about our fund, we're certainly targeting accredited investors only. We're only raising funds of folks that are very versed, right? Part of what we're doing is just making sure that we're providing as much opportunity in this region as possible. You know, Brandon referenced Zambia, which is an amazing company we've studied. We think they're awesome. They've just invested $100 million in some agriculture opportunities for providing their feed. So I think, again, great indication. So ultimately, around our fund, I'll just give you just a quick highlight of what we're doing. Ultimately, because I'm sure you're curious, we're raising $30 million. And with that 30 million, it's for completion of the land acquisition of 25,000 acres of land, which is, you know, we're just under that, about 10,000 hectares. And then development of industrial farming. That means land clearing, that means fencing, that means equipment, industrial equipment, irrigation for proper water, so we don't suffer some of the challenges in the region for droughts. I can tell you that when you map this out from a world map of where in the world is for proper growth for farming, our region happens to be one of the highlights in terms of green of farmable arable land. Out of Zambia, I'll just give you a quick metric. There's, what was it, 75 million acres of arable land for farming, and only about 14% are being utilized for farming. So in terms of opportunity, it's an abundance. So bringing equipment, industrial equipment for farming, regenerative farming, and ultimately with that harvesting, we're going to be, and what we modeled was and we took a very conservative approach, which would be what is the production or output from what we can grow per acre on a farm that we selected about 15,000 acres of a farmable land. And from that, what is the price point? And we used metrics. Jeff referenced the recent prices. We used metrics from 6 months ago. So it's even more conservative now, ultimately on the price per ton of maize, soybean, and winter wheat. And from that, it's going to provide a cash flow of this crop, right? And from that, that's how we're giving returns back to our investors. And then ultimately, part of our thesis is investing in the communities. So we have a big contribution element into our entire thesis. Brandon referenced the veins of opportunities. So in addition to what we're providing in terms of job creation in the farming community, one thing that we're noticing across all of Africa, not just in Zambia, but is the interest in refineries in country. And what does that mean? That means rather than exporting raw goods out to other countries to refine, whether it's minerals or whatever, it's building manufacturing facilities. So I think that's also very appropriate to mention in terms of why these railways are important, because it's all about how to move goods, and whether you're moving raw material or finished material will make a massive difference in terms of the returns of the value add for those particular lands. So that's a quick summary of what we're looking at. I won't go through any numbers. If you are interested, certainly reach out. Certainly we'd have to have you identify as an accredited investor, and we can go do some one-on-one in terms of what our thesis looks like, and we'll get into some of the real nitty-gritty in terms of how we're providing a return for our investors.
Carl, excellent job explaining the details of what we're doing and why we're doing it. Because here's the thing, guys, we truly believe in the value and the impact that we can bring to this nation. And at the end of the day, every one of us on this call and our entire team is extremely heart-centered and wants to bring value to the world. And we also understand that if we're going to do so, we're going to need a team behind us. We're going to need a team of people who want to invest in this operation, who are also heart-centered. And so to Carl's point, we do screen our investors. We are very careful with who we allow to come into our project. And we're not looking for everyone. We understand that not everyone is I would say, qualified or even right for this opportunity. And to Carl's point again, of course, this is purely for educational purposes. I like the way that Brandon said in one of our earlier webinars, we realize that a rising tide raises all boats. And we realize that if we can simply let people into what is going on behind the scenes, if we can help people maybe mitigate much of the risk that we've already mitigated, if we can help people understand, hey, watch out for that, you might want to get into this. If we can do that, then that brings more and more qualified, heart-centered people to really add even more value to the region. And this is what we're excited about. And this is why we're sharing this opportunity so freely and so openly with anyone who wants to jump on and be a part of it, whether they're investors, whether they're simply just adding value to the region like us, or whether they just simply want to bring some of their skills and expertise to the table and say, hey, I think I can genuinely have a positive impact here with you. So we want to just thank every one of you for being a part of this as we wrap up and transition into our Q&A. And again, we've discussed already so many beautiful things. We've talked about in our former calls, our former webinars, who we are, what we're doing, why we're passionate about this. And we would invite you to take a look at some of those for more detail. We talked about the strategic importance of where we are and why right now, for such a time as this, why right now is so important to be a part of this operation. And it's so important to be doing what we're doing, right? Because of, again, the Libido Corridor, the Tazara Railway, with everything that continues to come in and synchronistically just happen for us and around us, there's so much beauty that's taking place. So I want to jump right into, as we transition into our close and wrap up for the day, I want to transition into some of these questions, because we've got some folks in our panelists, in our attendees, that have asked outstanding questions. And again, I want to honor you and thank you for your engagement. I'd like to first begin with a question. Jeff, I think you'll be primed for answering this one. And it's this: why is Acres Club particularly interested in Africa and Zambia especially? So log that. There's a couple points. So I'll reiterate, and then we'll take it piece by piece. So why is Acres Club particularly interested in Africa and Zambia especially? What's in it for you? I think that's a great question, because we have to, I like I'll just interject this, Jeff. A good friend of mine, Frank McKinney, who has done tremendous work in South America, he coined a term, philanthrocapitalism. And he coined that term in that there has to be an infinity loop. It has to be sustainable, right? We have to be able to continue to create value in order to add value. And so I love that question. What's in it for you? And how will Acres Club benefit the local enterprises and enhance the local content? Or context seems to be the local community. So Jeff, what's in it for Acres Club particularly, and why are we interested in Africa, Zambia especially?
Well, I love your intuition, Scott. And it happens that I know Mara very, very closely. Mara and I, we work on some projects together with the Ministry of Science and Technology in Zambia. So I want to add that on there before I get started. And as always, Mara is very sharp. And I love that her interest is always making sure that whatever foreign entities that are coming into her country, has a good intention. We've worked on that, and that's one of the alignment that we have together. So I'm glad that you bring this up. So yeah, from our side, our interest in Africa is clear, Mara. We truly believe that Africa, I truly believe that Africa is the future, will play a big role in the future economies that are being developed now. And I think all of us here as GP general partners, we believe in that as well. Hence why we're putting a lot of our sweat equities, a lot of our own financial resources into putting this project. It's a big project for all of us. But we believe Africa is the future. And as we are edging ourselves and we have safe investment vehicles already in the US, and I'm definitely I'm internationally focused. So we all connected because we understand the future is Africa. And when we talked about going to Africa as a team, my recommendation was clear. Zambia is the place we're going to enter because I believe the geopolitical stability of Zambia, and of course the people I fell in love with 12 plus years ago. These are all factors that are going to create the foundation we need as Acres Club to create a Pan-African movement where we're leveraging our expertise, our investors' resources to create impact within the region. So that's how I would like to answer why Africa. And what's in it for us, of course, financial capitalism. We want to create value for investors without having without having to harm the local people. And I think that's a history that we're coming from, unfortunately. And the idea is to add value and create financial resources that benefits both us and the people of Zambia and the neighboring countries. So for us, we want to make sure that US investors can start tasting the value that Africa has. It's not just a place to just give charity. It's a place that I think US investors need to start looking with a different kind of lens. We think these are geopolitical agenda that has been pushed for decades. We're in a new era, and the era is Africa is going to basically it's a partnership we want to create in the land. So we want to come in, bring our expertise, bring bring resources, and to help develop the future of Africa. And that's basically the main point. And I think you mentioned the local enterprises. Yes, the SMEs play a big role. We need the SMEs. We had a meeting recently with a branch of the World Bank, and one of the things they want to emphasize on is what's going to happen to the SME. And my background is in education, as you know, Mara, and we want to make sure that we're focusing on the skill development so that whatever format or process that we put together, we can create micro version of these that can basically we can take and train the farmers around us to help contribute to the ecosystem and the supply chain that we're building. And that's how I want to wrap up this question. If there's anything else we want to add, maybe Brandon, if you want to add something on there, I think that's basically wrap it up on my side.
Yeah, no, thanks, Jeff. That was great. And yeah, Mara, great to have you on the call and with a wonderful question. So yeah, Jeff summed it up pretty well. I mean, as far as the way that we're going to locally impact, perhaps you've heard the term, general of our generic knowledge, but mastered none, right? And so what we're providing is something that's going to train people in a specific niche. The riches are in the niches, right? And so becoming an expert at something and being able to grow that, and you're going to have little branches off. I mean, at the end of the day, the population is growing across the world, okay? And with everything going on in Ukraine, that does not look like that's going to slow down, which is the breadbasket of the world. People are going to need more and more food and just basic ingredients. And so we're not really worried about training people and then all of a sudden having competition, which then hurts our demand on our product. So that's not really a risk that we're worried about because we know that the pie will keep growing because demand keeps growing. And so therefore supply actually does need to increase. So yeah, we'll go ahead. I think we've got another question here that I'll go ahead and run right into in the sake of time. So looking at this, so you mentioned food security and how it's going to be a big investment for all of Africa. What do you look for when you go about investing in this sector? What is it that you see in your scope? So appreciate the question. So I'll go ahead and touch on that. So looking at the food security, as we just talked about with the Ukraine crisis being the breadbasket of the world, like just in general, it's a basic need. So look at the El Nino that's going on right now in the area and how that has shot prices way up. And it's really become an issue because Zambia in general's food reserves are very low, which is why they're not allowing export. So having more supply is going to help eliminate that food security because grain can actually be stored for a long time. Put it in grain silos, stored for years, and then crushed in the mill and other things that can be, used to bake whatever. And so you don't really have a issue with making too much in this climate. And looking at, let's see, what is the other one? What do you look for about investing in this sector? So any sector that we invest in emerging markets, and this is just a common business rule, it's all about supply, demand, and risk mitigation. So whenever we first looked at this, and especially with me and my development background, there's certain things that you can do, and it's all about, on a financial side, ROI, return on investment, meaning how much can I invest and maximize my return? So I can invest $1 million and I make 2 million. Okay, that's 100% return on my money. Or I can invest 100,000 and make $1 million and 10x that. And so that's what we look for anything. So for this project in general, we know that with the plans of a new capital city coming in, the land will appreciate over time. However, what are we going to do to create cash flow in the meantime while keeping costs low? So when you talk about development of ground, okay, taking virgin ground, which is what you have, converting it to farmland is literally the smallest thing you can do. Like the only other thing you could do is just not develop it and hope to get paid by the government for not developing. And so instead of going and putting roads, infrastructure, and all these buildings and everything and hoping that it sells, it's like, okay, let's do the minimum investment for the maximum return. So that's what we look for. That's what we found. And we're very fortunate. And we talked about the universe is aligning because all this rail talk wasn't something on our radar when we first did it. We have, trucks that are trucking to Osaka, to the markets, to sell there, doing a contract with Zambia to provide grain for them. And so now opening up new markets with rail is just going to benefit us and the locals even more. So appreciate your question. I think I got all of it there. So I think we've got a couple more that have come through. We'll try to get to the next couple of minutes. Scott, if you want to pick one or two and probably toss it to maybe Carl or something.
Happy to help. Yeah, thank you guys. Again, attendees, thank you for your beautiful questions. We even had a few questions that came in ahead of time. Thank you so much for that as well. We're going to rapid fire these and we're going to go ahead and wrap up because we want to be respectful of everyone's time. We realize that we've got folks tuning in from all over the world. It might be 10 p.m. or 2 a.m. And so we want to thank you for that. Real quick here, how do we get the investment plan? In other words, how do we become a part of the investment is what I'm reading here, or more details on the return. Carl, you want to take that and let our viewers know how they can get in touch with us to be screened and potentially qualified as an investor in this opportunity?
Sure. I mean, there's really just two ways. Number one, you can go to our website and then click on more information. You can fill out a quick document that references you're an accredited investor. Or simply, if you want to just respond to our email invite, I believe that comes directly to me, and we can start a communication, then book a call, and we can take you through the details of the investment plan.
Outstanding. Thank you, Carl. And guys, here's the thing. Just to recap and summarize as we transition, and we'll let Jeff wrap us up. So Jeff, just prepping you for that, brother. Guys, I want to just thank you first and foremost. I want to thank you for attending. I want to thank you for taking time out of your day or your night or your early morning to be a part of this. I want to thank you for being a part of something beautiful. We all had the privilege of being in Zambia this last, I believe it was June or July of 2023. And we brought 250 Tony Robbins Platinum Partners, and it was an incredible operation. And one of that was a contribution where there was a school, the Makuni Village, and we brought sustainable infrastructure. We brought water. We brought all kinds of incredible stuff. And we were pulled aside when it was all done, a few of us, and they said, we are so grateful for the money that you bring to us and the good work that you do. What we really need, though, what we really need is your expertise. What we really need is the technologies that are around the world that maybe we're unaware of or hasn't been brought here yet. And so I want to just thank you all for being a part of that. I want to thank you for seeing our vision, for seeing how we can bring conscious, meaning done right, done with the heart in mind of the people that we're providing food to, right? We are heart-centered for our investors, for the people who are going to be benefiting from our operation. So conscious, sustainable, meaning it's something that can continue to generate value so we can continue to add value. And then regenerative, so conscious, sustainable, and regenerative. So this means that we're going into the land not to destroy the land, not to strip the land, but actually to build up the land and to bring so much value to the region so that we can also do so with the people who live there. Build them up, teach them new trades, give them new jobs, give them new opportunities, feed them, give them something that can be sustainable throughout generations to come. And our exit strategy, of course, is to have a much larger operation merge with us or even go public, who knows, and continue to add value to the region and add so much more than we could have ever thought, imagined, or desired. And again, when you do good, I believe, right? When you do good and you have a good heart and intention, the universe seems to conspire to form railways around you and opportunities around you to make sure that you're successful. So I just wanted to give a quick recap and a vote of gratitude. Jeff, if you'd like to say anything to wrap us up, brother, it's all yours.
No, I just want to say thank you everyone for coming and for all the questions we got and all the feedback. We see growth and interest growing since the first webinar we hosted. So we're going to keep creating content and finding topics of discussion. So we continue inviting you all to join us and to contribute. And together, we think we're going to continue having fun and create something super, super, super amazing. I believe in my heart that Africa is the future. And my team and I, we believe in it. And we're putting all of our efforts to ensure that every action we take is going to create ripple impact to benefit the people of the land, to benefit the people in the region. And this is our mission, and we're going to achieve it. We're going to make it big. So thanks for coming, and see you next time.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.